The massive chamber stretched out like a metal ocean under the twin suns of Centauri Prime. 47. Different species filled the curved seats that rose in perfect circles around the central floor. Some breathed oxygen like humans. Others needed special suits filled with methane or helium. Few floated in tanks of liquid that glowed with strange colors. Lisa Carter stood alone in the middle of it all. Her blue uniform felt heavy on her shoulders. 3 years ago, she had been excited to become Earth's first ambassador to the Galactic Council. Now, she wished she had never left home. The trial had been going on for 3 months. Every day, Lisa came to this same spot and listened to alien voices speak about her people. They used words like dangerous and unpredictable and threat. They talked about humans like they were wild animals that needed to be caged. Lisa looked up at the viewing galleries where news reporters from across the galaxy watched and recorded. Their cameras followed her every move. Tomorrow, beings on thousands of worlds would see what happened here today. She tried to stand straighter. The lights dimmed. A deep sound filled the chamber, like the ringing of a giant bell. Council Prime. Vexstar rose from his seat at the highest point of the room. He was tall and thin, with gray skin that looked like old metal. His eyes were black and showed no feeling at all. The council will now hear the final statements, Vexstar said. His voice came from speakers placed around the chamber. Ambassador Carter, you may speak for your species. Lisa stepped forward to the speaking platform. She had practiced this speech 100 times. She knew every word by heart. But now, looking up at all those alien faces, she felt very small. Members of the council, she began. Humanity has made mistakes. We know this. We came to the stars too fast, maybe. We built colonies before we understood all the rules. We fought wars when we should have talked. She paused and looked around the chamber. Some faces seemed to be listening. Others had already made up their minds. But we also brought gifts to this galaxy. Human doctors saved millions of lives during the Centauri plague. Human engineers built the quantum bridges that let you travel between stars in days instead of years. Human artists and musicians brought new beauty to your worlds. A low rumble came from the Vorthok section. Ambassador Korvax stood up. His species looked like bears made of rock. The human speaks of gifts, he said. But what about the Titan incident? What about the colony wars? What about the weapons they built? Lisa felt her heart beat faster. The Titan incident was an accident. We were testing new shield technology. We never meant to damage the moon. We paid for all repairs and gave you the shield technology for free? Free? Korvax laughed, a sound like stones falling. Gave us weapons that could destroy planets. Do you call that a gift? We gave you shields that could protect planets, Lisa said. You chose to study how to reverse them into weapons. The chamber erupted in angry sounds, clicks and hisses and roars from dozens of different species. Vexstar struck his gavel 3 times. The sound was loud enough to hurt Lisa's ears. Order, he commanded. Ambassador Carter, continue your statement. Lisa took a deep breath. Humanity asks for one more chance. We will accept any conditions you set. We will limit our military. We will slow our expansion. We will share all our technology. Just please, do not cut us off from the galaxy. She had not meant to beg. But standing there, representing all of humanity, she felt the weight of billions of lives depending on her words. The crystal being from Nexari Prime spoke next. Its voice sounded like wind chimes.
Oh.
The humans learned too fast. They changed too quickly. In 50 years, they went from 1 planet to 100 colonies. What will they do in the next 50 years? What will they become? Evolution is not a crime, Lisa said. Growing and learning are not crimes. For some species, they are, said the ancient Eldari representative. It was old beyond measure, its skin like tree bark, its eyes like deep water. You've watched the rise and fall of many species. We have seen what happens when a race grows too fast, learns too much, wants too much. They become destroyers. We are not destroyers, Lisa said. We're builders. We are explorers. We are dreamers. You are chaos, the Eldari said simply. Beautiful, terrible chaos. And chaos always destroys order in the end. The debate went on for hours. Species after species stood to speak against humanity. The Aquatic Collective said humans polluted too much. The Hive World said humans were too individual. The Machine Union said humans were too emotional. Lisa answered each accusation as best she could. She showed evidence of human charity, human art, human sacrifice for other species. She reminded them of the human soldiers who died defending Nixari colonies from space pirates. She talked about the human scientists who worked for free in alien hospitals and schools, but she could see it was not enough. The decision had been made before she ever spoke. This trial was just for show. Finally, Vexstar called for the vote. All in favor of exile for the human species? Lisa watched as lights appeared on the voting board. Red lights for yes, blue lights for no, green lights for abstention. The red lights came fast and many. The blue lights were few and far between. When the counting was done, the results were clear. 44 species voted for exile. 3 abstained. 0 voted against. The motion passes, Vexstar announced. By the power granted to this council by the Galactic Charter, humanity is hereby exiled from all council space. All human colonies outside their home system must be evacuated within 6 months. All human trade agreements are terminated. All human diplomatic privileges are revoked. The chamber was silent now. Lisa felt numb. She had expected this, but it still hit her like a physical blow. Earth itself will be quarantined, Vexstar continued. Automated defense platforms will be placed around the Sol system. Any human vessel that attempts to leave will be turned back. Any human who tries to return to council space will be arrested. Lisa found her voice. What about the humans who live in your space? The ones who married into your families? The ones who have children with your people? They may choose, Vexstar said. They can come with you, or they can stay and renounce their humanity forever. But they cannot be both human and citizens of council space. The cruelty of it took Lisa's breath away. Families would be torn apart. Children would have to choose between their human parent and their alien parent. Love would be sacrificed to politics. The human delegation acknowledges the council's decision, Lisa said. Her voice was steady, but inside she was screaming. We will comply fully. She turned away from the speaking platform. As she walked toward the exit, she could hear the alien voices behind her, already discussing other business. To them, the exile of humanity was just another item on the agenda. Outside the chamber, Lisa found a quiet corner and activated her secure communicator. The holographic face of Admiral Jack Morrison appeared, his gray hair and weathered face showing the strain of waiting. Jack, she said quietly, it's over. We're exiled. All of us. Morrison's face didn't change. He'd been a soldier for 40 years. He knew how to hide his feelings. How long do we have? 6 months to evacuate all colonies. Full quarantine of Earth after that. Morrison nodded slowly. I'll start the preparations. Lisa, you did everything you could. It wasn't enough. No, Morrison agreed. It wasn't. But maybe that's not entirely a bad thing. Lisa looked at him with surprise. What do you mean? Morrison smiled, but it was not a happy smile. You'll see. Come home, Lisa. It's time for humanity to remember what we're really capable of. The transmission ended. Lisa stood alone in the corridor, listening to the sounds of the alien capital around her. Soon she would never hear these sounds again. Soon, humanity would be alone among the stars. But as she walked toward her ship, she began to think about Morrison's words. Maybe being alone wasn't the worst thing that could happen to humanity. Maybe it was exactly what they needed. The message reached Earth before Lisa Carter's ship had even left Zentari Prime, within hours. Every human colony, research station, and outpost in the galaxy received the same coded transmission. 3 simple words. Operation Quiet Dawn. Admiral. Jack Morrison stood in the command center deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The room buzzed with activity as officers coordinated the largest evacuation in human history. Holographic displays showed the positions of human settlements across 47 star systems. Each dot represented thousands of lives that needed to be moved. Sir called Lieutenant Amy Foster from her station. New Sydney colony is reporting full compliance. They estimate evacuation complete in 72 hours. Morrison nodded. What about the mining operations in the Kepler system? All equipment is being dismantled as we speak? Dr. Hayes says they'll be ready to move in 48 hours. Morrison looked at the massive display that showed human space. Red dots marked colonies that were already evacuating. Yellow dots showed those in preparation. Green dots meant the evacuation was complete. The pattern was spreading across the galaxy like wildfire. Admiral, another officer, called out, "We're getting reports from alien news networks. They're calling. Our response, suspiciously organized." Morrison almost smiled. "Tell them we're just following orders." On New Sydney, Captain Helen Brooks watched as the last of the prefabricated buildings were loaded onto transport ships. The colony had been humanity's pride, an agricultural world that fed 12 neighboring systems. Now it was being packed, up like a traveling circus. "Captain," said Engineer Bob Miller, wiping sweat from his face, "the Vorthok administrator is asking why we're taking the soil processors. Says they belong to the planetary government." Helen looked at the alien official. Standing nearby, he was tall and rocky, like all his kind, but his expression showed confusion and growing alarm. "The soil processors were built by human engineers using human technology," Helen said calmly. "They're coming with us. The crops," the Vorthok protested. "The next harvest season. The food contracts with 3 systems." "Not our problem anymore," Helen replied. "We're exiled, remember? We have no business here." She turned back to Miller. "Make sure every piece of human-made equipment is loaded. Every computer, every tool, every spare part. If human hands built, it comes with us." Miller grinned. "Yes, ma'am. Should I tell the boys to be extra careful with the quantum generators?" "Very careful," Helen said. "We wouldn't want to accidentally damage anything that might be useful to our new friends here." 3 systems away, Dr. Peter Hayes was overseeing the evacuation of the Joint Research Station. The facility had been humanity's contribution to galactic science, a place where human researchers worked alongside alien scientists to push the boundaries of knowledge. Doctor called his assistant Dr. Kate Wilson. "The Nexari team is requesting access to the quantum computer cores. They say they need to continue the dark matter research." Peter looked through the observation window at the crystal beings working frantically in the next room. For 5 years, they had collaborated on experiments that were changing their understanding of the universe. Now that partnership was ending. "Tell them the cores are human property," Peter said. "All research data has been encrypted and will be leaving with us." "But Sir," Kate protested, "the research is only half complete. The antimatter containment project could save billions of lives." Peter's expression was hard. "The council voted to exile us. That means they don't want our help anymore. We're giving them exactly what they asked for." He walked to the main computer terminal and began entering commands. One by one, the research databases were being wiped clean. Years of work, breakthrough, discoveries, revolutionary theories, all of it was disappearing from the station's memory banks. "What about the backup copies?" Kate asked. "Those are coming with us," Peter said. "Who knows? Maybe we'll find the motivation to continue the research on our own." The evacuation was happening so fast that many alien governments barely had time to react. On the industrial world of Harmony, the local Nexaria officials woke up to find that the human factories had shut down overnight. The workers were gone, the equipment was being loaded onto ships, and the production lines that had run for decades were standing silent. Administrator Zixgall rushed to the spaceport where the last human transports were preparing to leave. Found factory manager Dan Roberts supervising the loading of the final machinery. Roberts, Zixgall called out, his crystal voice ringing with panic. "You cannot leave now. The defense contracts, the medical supplies, the food processors, 3 billion beings depend on this production." Dan looked at the alien administrator with no expression. "Find new suppliers." "There are no new suppliers," Zixgall said. "The technology is too complex. It will take years to train new workers." "Then you should have thought of that before you voted to exile us," Dawn replied. The transport ship's engines began to warm up. Dan picked up his personal bag and walked toward the loading ramp. "Wait," Zixcall called after him. "At least leave the technical manuals, the maintenance schedules, something to help us keep the systems running." Dan paused at the ramp and looked. "Back. The council said we were dangerous and unpredictable. They were right. Our technology is dangerous in the wrong hands. Our knowledge is unpredictable when you don't understand the principles behind it." He walked up the ramp without looking. Back, the pattern was the same everywhere. Human teachers left their alien students. Human doctors abandoned their alien patients. Human engineers shut down their alien projects. They took their tools, their knowledge, and their skills, leaving behind only empty buildings and silent machines. On the trade station, orbiting Centauri B, Customs Officer Chris Martinez was processing the departure of the last human merchant vessel. The ship's captain, Maria Santos, handed over the station's access codes and security protocols. "That's everything," Maria said. "The station is yours now." Chris looked at the datapad in his hands. "Maria, you've been running the security here for 8 years. The protocols, the emergency procedures, the defense systems, I don't know how any of it works." "Neither do the aliens," Maria replied. "They never bothered to learn. They just assumed we'd always be here to handle the complicated stuff." Merchant vessel undocked and moved toward the hyperspace jump point. Chris watched it disappear into the starfield, then looked around the station. For the first time in his life, he was the only human in a place that had been built by humans. The communication systems were human-designed. The life support was human-maintained. The artificial gravity was human-engineered. And now Chris was the only one who knew how any of it worked. He activated his emergency transmitter and sent a message to the Galactic Trade Authority. "This is Centauri Station. We have a problem." Back on Earth, Admiral Morrison received regular updates from the evacuation fleet. The numbers were staggering. Over 15 million humans were being relocated from across the galaxy. Entire worlds were being abandoned. Decades of colonization effort were being undone in a matter of weeks. Sir Lieutenant Foster reported, "The last transport from the outer colonies has just jumped to hyperspace. All human personnel are now in transit." Morrison looked at the display screen. The red dots were gone. The yellow dots had turned green. Across the galaxy, human space was empty. "What about the diplomatic missions?" Morrison asked. "Ambassador Carter is aboard the final diplomatic vessel. They'll be home in 6 days." Morrison nodded. "And the special equipment?" Foster smiled. "All secured, sir. It's every piece of advanced technology, every research database, every manufacturing template. If humans built it, designed it, or improved it, we've got it." Morrison looked out the window. At the night sky, somewhere up there, the Galactic Council was probably celebrating their victory over the dangerous humans. They had no idea what they had really done. "Signal all colonies," Morrison ordered. "Tell them welcome home. Phase 2 begins now." Foster looked puzzled. "Phase 2, sir?" Morrison's smile was cold. "The aliens wanted us gone. Now they're going to learn what life is like without us." The first signs of trouble appeared just 3 days after the last human transport left Centauri Station. Security Chief Yactel was reviewing the morning reports when the alerts began flashing across his screen. Power fluctuations in Section C, life support irregularities in the residential quarters. Communication static on the emergency channels, Computer, Yactel said in his gravelly voice. "Run full diagnostic on all station systems." Response came back in clipped tones. "Diagnostic complete. 137 minor errors detected. 12 major system warnings. 3 critical failures pending." Yactel stared at the screen. The station had run perfectly for 8 years. Maria Santos had handled all the technical problems so smoothly that most aliens never even knew they existed. Now 3 days after her departure, everything was falling apart. Computer, implement automatic repair protocols. Automatic repair protocols require human authorization codes. Override with administrative authority. Administrative authority insufficient. Human chief engineer authorization required. Yactel threw his datapad across the room. The humans had built the station, programmed the computers, and designed the safety systems. Without them, he was locked out of his own command center, 2 systems away. The massive Centauri mining station was experiencing its own crisis. The facility processed rare metals from the asteroid belt, feeding the manufacturing needs of 12 worlds. Chief Engineer Vexkull had worked alongside human engineer Carlos Rivera for 6 years. He thought he understood the systems. He was wrong. Quantum extractors that pulled precious metals from solid rock had been running continuously for a decade. Carlos had maintained them with the skill of someone who understood not just how they worked, but why they worked. Now, without his constant adjustments and repairs, the delicate machines were beginning to fail. "Technician Kelvar?" Vexkull called to his assistant. "The number 3 extractor is making strange noises again." Kelvar looked at the machine with confusion. "I ran the standard maintenance cycle, just like the manual says, but it keeps getting louder." Vexkull examined the extractor himself. The manual said to check the power couplings and verify the quantum field alignment. Both seemed normal. The machine was definitely sick. It made grinding sounds that had never been there before. "Try increasing the power flow," Vexkull suggested. Kelvar adjusted the controls. The grinding noise got louder, and sparks began shooting from the quantum chamber. "Decrease power," Vexkull ordered quickly. The sparks stopped, but now the extractor was barely working at all. In one day, their metal production had dropped by 30%. If the other extractors started failing, entire planetary economies would collapse. "Contact the human homeworld," Vexkull said finally. "Ask them for technical assistance." Kelvar tried for an hour. Every message came back with the same response. "Humanity is complying with the terms of exile. We no longer participate in council." Space activities. On the agricultural world of Harmony, the situation was even worse. The crop enhancement systems that had fed 3 billion beings were shutting down one by one. Administrator Zixkull walked through the massive greenhouses that had once been humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy. The plants were dying, Dr. Kevin. Stone had designed the enhancement systems to work with the planet's unique soil and climate. The alien farmers had learned to operate the machines, but they had never understood the complex biology behind them. Now, without Kevin's constant monitoring and adjustment, the delicate balance was breaking down. "The pH levels are wrong," reported agricultural specialist Exile. "The nutrient mixture is too acidic. Adjust the chemical processors," Zixkull ordered. "I tried. The system won't accept my commands. It says the biological conditions are outside safe parameters." Zixkull looked at the withering crops. The plants, that had once grown twice as fast and 3 times as large, were now smaller than wild vegetation. Within weeks they would all be dead. "How long will our food reserves last?" he asked. Nextel calculated quickly. 3 months, maybe 4, if we ration strictly. "And how long to train new agricultural specialists?" "Years. The human systems require knowledge of quantum biology, genetic modification, and atmospheric chemistry. Our people were never taught these subjects." Zixkull closed his eyes. 3 billion beings depended on this world's food production. Without it, entire systems would starve. The quantum communication network was failing too. Dr. Rachel Ward spent her career designing the delicate systems that allowed instant communication across the galaxy. The alien technicians who maintained the network had learned to follow procedures, but they had never learned to solve problems. On the communication hub at Vega Station, Chief Operator Zixmel watched in horror as the quantum entanglement arrays began losing synchronization. The network that connected 47 worlds was developing gaps. "The Andromeda relay is offline," reported his assistant. "The Centauri link is showing massive interference. The inner colonies are getting only intermittent signals." Zixmel tried everything he could think of. He followed the emergency procedures exactly as the humans had taught him. He reset the quantum fields, realigned the particle streams, and recalibrated the entanglement generators. Nothing worked. "Sir," his assistant said quietly, "receiving emergency signals from 17 systems. They're losing contact with the rest of the galaxy." The network that had taken 30 years to build was collapsing in 30 days. Back on Earth, Admiral Morrison watched the reports flowing in from automated monitoring stations. The humans had left behind hidden sensors throughout the galaxy, carefully concealed devices that recorded everything happening in their former territories. Status report, Morrison ordered. Lieutenant Foster read from her datapad. Centauri mining station is down to 40% capacity. The agricultural worlds are reporting crop failures. Communication network has lost 30% of its connections. Trade routes are being disrupted by navigation system failures. Morrison nodded. What about the defense systems? The automated defense platforms are still working. But several worlds are reporting problems with their military equipment. Seems like the weapon systems need more maintenance than the aliens realized. Morrison studied the galaxy map on his screen. Red warning lights were appearing throughout former human space. Systems that had worked perfectly for decades were failing all at once, sir, Foster continued. Receiving hundreds of messages from Council worlds. They're requesting technical assistance, maintenance manuals, emergency repairs. Some are offering to pay huge sums for just a few human engineers. What's our response? The same as always. We're complying with the terms of Exile. We no longer participate in Council space activities. Morrison stood up and walked to the window. The night sky looked peaceful, but he knew that out there, an entire galactic civilization was slowly falling apart. Admiral Foster said carefully, "Some of the messages are getting desperate.
Ow.
The Vorthok are offering to lift the Exile if we'll help them fix their manufacturing systems. The Nexaray are begging for just one human technician to help with their medical equipment." Morrison turned back to her. "And what do you think we should do, Lieutenant?" Foster hesitated. "Sir, people are going to die if we don't help. The hospital, systems, the life support, the food production. Innocent beings are going to suffer." Morrison's expression was hard. "The Council voted to exile us because they thought we were dangerous. They said we were unpredictable and chaotic. They were afraid of what we might do to their perfect galactic order." He walked back to his desk and sat down. "Well, now they know what we really do to their galactic order. We hold it together. Make it work. We solve the problems that they can't even see." Foster looked troubled. "So we just let them suffer?" Morrison leaned back in his chair. "Lieutenant, do you know what the definition of dangerous is?" "Sir, dangerous is when someone has power over you and you don't even know it." Morrison smiled. Coldly, the aliens thought they were exiling us. But what they actually did was exile themselves from us. And now they're learning the difference. On the screen, more red lights were appearing. Our systems were failing. The galaxy that had rejected humanity was discovering just how much it needed them. "Sir," Foster said quietly, "how long do we let this continue?" Morrison looked at the display showing the spreading chaos. "Until they realized that we weren't the dangerous ones. They were dangerous to themselves." The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in the organization's thousand-year history. Representatives arrived in broken ships using backup communication systems and carrying reports of widespread system failures. The great chamber that had once symbolized galactic unity now felt like a hospital emergency room. Council Prime Vextar looked older than his years as he called the session to order. His gray skin had taken on a sickly pallor, and his usually steady voice cracked with exhaustion. "The Council recognizes the severity of the current crisis," he began. "We are here to find solutions." Ambassador Corvex of the Vorthok Empire stood. First, his rock-like features, usually so confident and strong, showed deep cracks of stress. "The human exile has been a disaster for my people," he admitted. "Our military production has fallen by 60%. Our mining operations are failing. Our defensive systems are breaking down faster than we can repair them." A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. These were proud species admitting weakness, something that had never happened before. "The economic models the humans created were more complex than we understood," Corvax continued. "They didn't just trade with us. They optimized our entire supply chains, predicted our market needs, and balanced our resource distribution. Without their systems, our economy is collapsing." The crystal representative from Nexar Prime spoke next, her voice like breaking glass. "Our medical systems are failing. The human doctors didn't just treat patients, they designed treatment protocols, programmed diagnostic equipment, and created pharmaceutical production lines. Our hospitals are becoming death traps." Scholar Quinder of the ancient Eldari rose slowly. His tree-like form seemed more withered than before. "We have lived for millennia, and seen many species rise and fall. But we have never seen anything like this. The humans were not just participants in our civilization, they were its foundation. The admission sent shockwaves through the chamber. The Eldari had been the strongest supporters of Exile, claiming that humans were too chaotic and dangerous. Now their most respected scholar was saying the opposite. "How is this possible?" demanded Ambassador Exile of the Aquatic Collective. "We have been spacefaring for thousands of years. We built this civilization before humans even discovered fire." Quindersh's ancient eyes turned toward him. "We built the framework, yes, but the humans made it work. They found solutions to problems we didn't know existed. They created efficiencies we couldn't imagine. They held everything together with their chaos and creativity." The reports continued for hours. Every species had the same story. Systems that had run perfectly for decades were failing. Technology that had seemed simple was proving impossibly complex. The galaxy's infrastructure was crumbling without human maintenance. "What about the technical manuals?" asked the Hive. "World's representative. Surely the humans left instructions for maintaining their systems." "They did," replied Vexstar grimly. "But the manuals assume knowledge that only humans possess. They reference human educational concepts, human problem-solving methods, human ways of thinking. We can follow the steps, but we cannot adapt when something goes wrong." Machine Union Delegate, a robotic entity called Unit 7, projected data into the chamber. Analysis of human technical documentation reveals recursive complexity. Human solutions assume human intuition. Human maintenance requires human creativity. Without human minds, human technology becomes inoperable. The truth was becoming clear. The humans had not just built machines. They had built systems that required human thinking to function. Every piece of technology, every organizational structure, every economic model had been designed by minds that worked differently from any other species in the galaxy. "We must contact Earth," said Ambassador Nextol of the mining worlds. "We must negotiate their return." "With what leverage?" Vexstar asked bitterly. "We exiled them, told them they were dangerous. We cut them off from the galaxy." "Why would they want to come back?" The chamber fell silent. The reality of their situation was sinking in. They had thrown away their most valuable resource, and then realized they couldn't survive without it. "There is another problem," said the representative from the outer colonies.
Ow.
"Our intelligence services report that Earth has not been passive during their exile. They have been building, expanding. Their technology appears to have advanced significantly. In the past 6 months, this news caused an even greater stir. The aliens had assumed that exile would weaken humanity, forcing them to survive on their single world. Instead, humanity seemed to be thriving. How is that possible?" Corvex demanded. "They were cut off from galactic resources, galactic knowledge, galactic trade." "Perhaps that was exactly what they needed," Quinder said quietly. "We assumed they required our guidance, our resources, our approval. But humans are not like us. They do not need external validation to grow. They need freedom to explore, to experiment, to make mistakes, and learn from them." The implications were terrifying. Humanity was growing stronger in isolation. What would happen when they eventually returned to the galaxy? Would they even want to cooperate with the species that had rejected them? "We need to send a delegation," Vexstar decided. "A formal diplomatic mission to Earth. We will acknowledge our mistakes and request their assistance. And if they refuse?" asked the Nexari representative. Vexstar's expression was grim. "Then we will face the consequences of our actions." The vote was unanimous. For the first time in the Council's history, they were going to beg for help from the species they had exiled. 3 days later, Admiral Kethmer of the Nexari fleet prepared for the most important mission of his career. His ship, the Convergence, was one of the few remaining vessels with fully functional long-range systems. The journey to Earth would take 2 weeks, assuming their failing navigation systems could find the way. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the Sol system." Kethmer was surprised. "From Earth?"
Ow.
"Sir, it appears to be an automated message from the quarantine platforms. Standard warning about entering restricted space." Kethmer listened to the message. It was polite, but firm. Any vessel approaching Earth would be scanned and questioned. Hostile actions would result in immediate destruction. The voice was artificial, but somehow it sounded very human. Prepare a diplomatic response, Kethmer ordered. Full identification, peaceful intentions, request for permission to approach. The response came back within minutes. Diplomatic vessel convergence. You are authorized to approach Earth's orbit. Any deviation from assigned course will be considered hostile action. Earth's Defense Force will escort you to parking orbit. As the convergence entered the Sol system, Kethmer was shocked by what he saw. The orbital space around Earth was filled with construction, massive space stations, shipyards, and manufacturing facilities stretched from the Moon to Mars. It was obvious that humanity had been very busy during their exile. Admiral, his science officer, called out, "I'm detecting technology. Signatures that don't match any known human designs. Some of these structures appear to be using principles we've never seen before." Kethmer stared at the displays. The humans had not just survived their exile, they had used it to leap ahead technologically, free from council regulations and alien oversight. They had pushed the boundaries of what was possible. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we're being hailed by Earth Defense Command." The holographic image that appeared showed a human in a crisp military uniform. Admiral Jake Morrison looked exactly as he had 6 months ago, but his eyes held a hardness that hadn't been there before. "Admiral Kethmer," Morrison said formally. "I am Admiral Morrison, Supreme Commander of Earth Defense Forces. State your business." Kethmer struggled to find the right words. "Admiral Morrison, I represent the Galactic Council. We have come to discuss the current crisis in Council space and to request Earth's assistance." Morrison's expression didn't change. "Council voted to exile Earth. We complied with that decision. What crisis in Council space has anything to do with us, Admiral? Surely you know that our systems are failing. The technology your people built, the processes they designed, the knowledge they provided, without them, our civilization is collapsing." Morrison nodded slowly. "Yes, we know. We've been monitoring the situation. Then you understand why we need your help." Morrison's smile was cold. "Admiral, 6 months ago, the Council decided that humanity was too dangerous to remain in Galactic civilization. That we were too unpredictable, too chaotic, too much of a threat to galactic order. Has something changed?" Kethmer felt a chill run through him. "We made a mistake." "Yes," Morrison agreed. "You did, and now you want us to fix it." Admiral Kethmer sat in the uncomfortable chair in the Earth Defense Command briefing room. The walls were covered with displays showing human space, which had grown far beyond the Sol system during their exile. Ships moved between Jupiters, moons, massive construction projects orbited Saturn, and the asteroid belt buzzed with mining operations that made the old Centauri facilities look primitive. Admiral Morrison entered the room with Ambassador Lisa Carter, who had returned from her exile mission 6 months ago. Both humans looked calm and professional, but Kethmer could sense the steel beneath their polite surfaces. Admiral Morrison began, "You said the Council needs our help. Let me make sure I understand the situation correctly." He activated a holographic display that showed the current state of Council space. Red warning lights covered most of the galaxy. Failed systems, collapsed economies, and dying worlds painted a picture of civilization in freefall. "Your mining operations are failing because you can't maintain the quantum extractors," Morrison said matter-of-factly. "Your communication network is breaking down because you don't understand quantum entanglement theory. Your medical systems are killing patients because you can't adapt the treatment protocols. Your food production is collapsing because you never learned the principles behind the enhancement systems." Kethmer nodded miserably. "That is correct. And now you want humanity to return and fix everything." "Yes," Kethmer said desperately. "We admit we made a mistake. We will lift the exile, restore all trade agreements, and provide full diplomatic status. We will even pay reparations for the cost of evacuation." Morrison exchanged a look with Carter. "That's very generous. But I have a question. What happens the next time you decide humanity is too dangerous? What happens when our solutions work too well? When our technology advances too fast. When our ideas challenge your comfortable assumptions. Kethmer opened his mouth to respond, but Morrison continued. You see, Admiral, we've had 6 months to think about this. The Council didn't exile us because we did something wrong. You exiled us because we made you uncomfortable. We solved problems you couldn't solve. We built things you couldn't build. We thought in ways you couldn't understand. Carter leaned forward. The trial was never about justice. It was about fear. You were afraid that humans would outgrow the need for your approval, your guidance, your control. And you were right to be afraid. Morrison stood up and walked to the window. Through the transparent aluminum, the sprawling orbital cities of Earth's space stretched out like a metal constellation. During our exile, we learned something important about ourselves, he said. We don't need the galaxy's permission to be great. We don't need alien approval to innovate. We don't need council membership to explore the stars. Turn back to Kethmer. In 6 months, we've made more scientific breakthroughs than we did in the previous 10 years. We've developed new technologies that make our old systems look like stone tools. We've expanded our civilization beyond anything we achieved while trying to fit into your galactic order. Kethmer felt a growing sense of dread. What are you saying? I'm saying that exile was the best thing that ever happened to humanity. Morrison replied, You forced us to become self-reliant. You made us remember that we don't need anyone else to survive and thrive. Carter activated another display. While your civilizations were collapsing, we were building. New colonies, new technologies, new ways of thinking. We've solved problems that the Council declared impossible. We've built ships that can travel faster than anything in your fleets. We've developed medical treatments that make your hospitals look like medieval torture chambers. Morrison walked back to the table and sat down. So here's the real question, Admiral. What can the Council offer us that we can't provide for ourselves? Kethmer struggled to find an answer. Trade opportunities? Access to rare resources? Cultural exchange. We can trade with independent worlds that aren't part of the Council, Morrison said. We can mine our own resources more efficiently than you ever could. And as for cultural exchange, ... He gestured around the room. That we prefer our own culture to yours. The truth was sinking in. The Council had expected to find a broken humanity, desperate for readmission to galactic civilization. Instead, they had found a species that had grown beyond the need for their approval. You're refusing to help, Kethmer said quietly. We're refusing to return to the way things were, Carter corrected. The Council made it clear that humanity's place in the galaxy was conditional on your approval. We've learned to live without that approval. Morrison leaned back in his chair. But we're not completely heartless. We understand that innocent beings are suffering because of the Council's decisions. We're prepared to offer limited assistance. Kethmer felt a spark of hope. What kind of assistance? Humanitarian aid, Morrison said. Medical supplies for failing hospitals, food shipments to worlds facing starvation, emergency repair teams for life support systems. But this aid comes with conditions. What conditions? Carter consulted her datapad. First, the Council must publicly acknowledge that the exile was a mistake. Second, the Council must pay full reparations for the cost of evacuation and the economic damage caused by the exile. Third, any human who chooses to work in Council space will be granted full diplomatic immunity and protection. Morrison continued. Fourth, humanity will maintain complete control over our technology and knowledge. We will provide assistance, but we will not share our advanced systems or research. Fifth, this assistance is temporary. Once the immediate crisis is resolved, humanity will withdraw from Council space permanently. Kethmer stared at them. Permanently. The Council voted to exile us because you believed we were incompatible with galactic civilization. Carter explained, we've discovered that you were right. We are incompatible. Think differently. We work differently. We dream differently. Trying to fit into your system held us back. Morrison stood up. We're not rejoining the Council, Admiral. We're offering to help you survive long enough to learn to live without us. But the galaxy needs human innovation, Kethmer protested. Your creativity, your problem-solving abilities, your technological advances. The galaxy had all of that, Morrison replied. and the galaxy chose to throw it away because it was inconvenient. You made your choice. Now you have to live with the consequences. Carter walked to the door. Admiral, you have 24 hours to present our terms to the Council. If they accept, we'll begin humanitarian assistance immediately. If they refuse, you're welcome to try solving your problems on your own. Kethmer left the meeting in a daze. The humans were offering help, but not the kind of help the Council wanted. They were offering to treat the symptoms, not cure the disease. They were offering to keep galactic civilization alive, but not to restore it to its former glory, as his ship prepared to leave Earth orbit. Kethmer took one last look at the thriving human civilization surrounding him. The orbital cities, the industrial complexes, the research stations, all of it built in just 6 months. All of it proof that humanity had moved beyond the need for galactic approval. The message he would carry back to the Council was clear. Humanity had learned to live without the galaxy. The question now was whether the galaxy could learn to live without humanity. 3 days later, President Maria Rodriguez addressed the people of Earth from the presidential palace in Geneva. The speech was broadcast to every human world, every orbital station, every deep space colony. My fellow humans, she began. 6 months ago, we were exiled from the galaxy. We were told we were too dangerous, too chaotic, too unpredictable to remain in galactic civilization. Today, we have been asked to return. She paused, looking directly into the camera. We have declined that invitation. It's not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of wisdom. We have learned that we do not need the galaxy's permission to be great. We do not need alien approval to reach for the stars. The speech continued for 20 minutes, outlining humanity's new path. They would help with the humanitarian crisis, but they would not return to the old system. They would explore new regions of space, develop new technologies, and build new civilizations. They would do all of this on their own terms, in their own way, at their own pace. We are not rejecting the galaxy, Rodriguez concluded. We are simply choosing to be ourselves. We are choosing to be human. And we have learned that being human is enough. The stars that had once seemed forbidden now beckoned with unlimited promise, and humanity, free from the need for anyone else's approval, began their journey toward a future that would be entirely their own.